Hi, welcome to Zach Labs. My name is Brian Morris, and today we are going to be talking about enlarging patterns. Now, there's a whole variety of ways that you can take a small little picture or pattern that you have and enlarge it. You can use some complex mathematical formula, or you can actually use your own printer. It has a scaling function, a tiling function in it, so that you can say, I want to enlarge it 100, 200, 400%, and it'll tile it off, and then you just glue all the pieces together into a large pattern. Or you could take it to a commercial print house, one of these places that has large printers that'll print it off for you. That might be a little expensive, but you'll get an exact duplicate, large-scaled pattern to work off of. Today we're going to go old school. In fact, it's so old, it's the same method that the architects use in creating the pyramids. When I created this shoulder piece, this is off of a character from World of Warcraft, a Draenei shaman, and he's wearing tier level 6 Sky Shadow Regalia armor. Now, all I had to go by was a little photograph that I did a screen capture of one of my buddies who had the armor, and then I had to create this full scale so it actually looked like it was the proper size when I was going to wear it. And to do that, I used the graphing method, and that's what we're going to do today. We picked a character from League of Legends to do this with. His name is Tryndamere. Sorry if I mispronounced that. But he's got this really rad sword, and I've got some pictures for references on how big it is compared to he himself. And it looks like it's about, I don't know, 5.5, 6 feet long. And so that's what we're going to try duplicating today. So the first step is that we're going to use a small scale, 8.5 by 11 picture, and we're going to create a graph on this in order that we can transfer this image onto an enlarged pattern really easily and to keep all the detail, and you don't have to be a great artist to do it. So here we have our reference image that we're going by, both of them when he's using it, what it looks like when it's hanging behind him, and a size reference here when he's standing with the sword next to him. And like I said before, it looks like, you know, if he was 6 feet tall, the sword might be 5.5, 6 feet tall as well. My foam size, I can fit 5.5 feet, so we're going to make it 5.5 feet for this sword. I've isolated the sword itself, and I printed it out onto a piece of paper, 8.5 by 11 here. And I'm going to take the next step now in putting a grid work onto this image so I can easily transfer it over to a larger pattern size. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outline this drawing just a little bit better so I know exactly where the outside edges are when I start graphing. The copier didn't give me a real clear definition, so I'm going to just give myself an outline here to work with. Now that I've given myself an outline, I'm going to get a straight edge ruler and start creating a graph to cover the entire drawing. And I'm going to kind of go from right down as much as I can in the middle of it here. I'm just going to give myself a straight line. And it doesn't really matter where you start, or it doesn't even matter how big the graph is, but it has to be some type of a measurement that you're going to copy from one graph to the other. So this is this drawing here, this sword, is approximately, I don't know, it's going to be about 10 inches in length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give myself 1-inch blocks on this graph to work with. So I'm just going to start marking off 1-inch increments on this line. And then I'm going to go give myself a couple of cross lines here that I can work with. And these are going to be 1-inch also. So I have 1-inch boxes that I'm going to be working with. Okay, I finished putting the graph on top of the drawing here of the sword. Mine are 1-inch squares, although that's not that important. The important part is that we have the same number of squares on the small drawing as we do on the big one. And it's really not important whether you use empirical or metric. We just want to have the same number of squares. So let's go out into the shop and I'll show you on a big piece of paper how you're going to enlarge this perfectly from a small 8.5 by 11 piece of paper onto a 5.5 foot size sword. Okay, we moved out to the big table. I brought along with me a drawing with a little grid work on it of the 8.5 by 11 picture of the sword I want to enlarge. I also have a measuring tape, a straight edge, a pencil, and a large straight edge, which just happens to be a straight board I had laying around in the garage here. So let's go ahead and we're going to get started duplicating and enlarging this little pattern into an actual 5 foot long sword. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with a large line right down the middle. That's going to give me a place to start from here. And I'm just going to start making squares. And since this was 5.5 squares, I'm still going to make 5.5 squares on the big sheet, except now they're going to be 1 foot squares since my final piece I want to be about 5.5 feet. So we're just going to pick a place right here in the middle, and I'm going to start making marks on it here. And I'm making them at every 1 foot increment. Now, because I have some detailed spots on here, I did make the graph also in half squares, which would be 6 inches. So we're also going to put those in. And I'm going to make the cross piece on here now. So it's going to be 1 foot wide. Go up to the next section here, next mark. Again, make some hash marks there. I'm going to use my straight edge here just to make a long parallel line that's going to help me eventually make really nice square squares. So now we just start making the cross squares here. You can use an actual square if you like. I'm just kind of eyeballing it here a little bit. So I'm going to have 6-inch squares when I get done. And now that I have a set of squares here, I have the set of squares here, I can start mimicking the drawing from one set of squares to the other, or one set of graphs to the other set of graphs, and enlarging it. And you can start on wherever you want to on it, on the ends, in the middle. It's not really that critical. I can start right here in the middle and just say, okay, this is going to be the point right here where I'm going to start in the middle. And I've got a point of one of the edges of the sword about right here. It's going to come down. I just like making little dots as I go along. Helps me make a little bit better curves. And you can make as many dots or as points in here, and then you can kind of just start drawing it in that it'll mimic. All of a sudden I've got a much larger version. You can see how this is going to be really accurate, and it's going to be full size, 5.5 feet when I get done. Here we are, almost finished with the complete drawing of the sword. Again, I've just been going point by point along, transferring what's on the small image on the graphs here to the larger graphs, and you can see it's actually looking pretty good. I've got some more detail that I'm going to fill in the middle here because I'll be using this multiple times as I create the sword for different parts of it, small little insets and the outside edges, the inside edges. I'll use that multiple times as I go through the whole creation process here. But we've done a really good job. Real simple, just using a graphing method from a small one to a large one, and we have a pretty cool pattern to start making the sword with. So there you have it. We've successfully enlarged a small little image we got off the computer into an actual 5 foot long duplicated pattern. Now I'm going to just take my scissors, cut it out, and transfer it onto my foam base for the next step in building my sword. Hope you've enjoyed this episode from Zach Labs.
come back again and we'll talk some more about cosplay, costumes, and props. And remember, keep building those epic costumes.